And we're back in New Orleans, bruh. Fucking right here in Metairie.
Metairie,
bruh. Metairie. I am joined by the fine gentleman of Mimic. Got Mr. Jorge.
Hello.
And Mr. Apollo.
Greetings, good morning.
Now, y'all might remember Apollo from the Heraclean fame. It's just one and the same. He's our dude. We just came off a little Florida run together with his band Heraclean and with the Gold Whore. Lots of fun.
Good memories.
So how y'all doing, guys?
Chilling.
Doing well. It's a beautiful day.
It is a beautiful day. We had a little bit of rain yesterday, traveling. It's my second day in a row coming to New Orleans. I don't know if I told y'all that.
No.
Went
Portugal.
No. I came do a podcast over at the Fountain Blue building.
Okay.
And
okay, nice. Yeah, that's how all the bands practice.
Yep. I'll leave the guest a mystery right now until it comes out.
Nice. Nice.
But it was fun nonetheless. But anyway, it's neither here nor there. Let's talk about Mimic. How excited are y'all? Are y'all excited as me? Because I'm pretty damn excited about Mimic.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, and there's, we're in Apollo's apartment, and just the amount of immense talent that's in this room. I'm not speaking for myself, but these two guys, I mean, y'all are actually lifelong students of music and continue to push the boundaries as far as you can with the abilities that y'all have. And dude, I mean,
so we hit the dirt.
There you go. So how did this come about? How did Mimic start?
It started, I had some riffs I had written a few years ago that made their way onto the demo that I just never completed. They just sat there in my DAW. That is a digital audio workstation for the non-technical out there. They just sat in my workstation for the longest, and I went to the Celtic Frost tribute show at Portside that Sammy and him did, and Apollo was there because their bass player, Christian, their drummer, Speed, were the rhythm section.
Oh, Morbid Tales.
Celtic Frost tribute.
Yeah, and Paul was like, "Oh man, I'll help you finish those tunes up, dude. Let's jam." And so I took him up on it, and he came in and started with the 3 or 4 initial riffs that I had, and fleshed them out with ideas, and it became the songs. For those of you who have the demo, have listened to it. For the most part, songs 2, 3, and 4 were the riffs I had written. I have to give the credit to Apollo on song 1, Within an Old Future. The majority of that is pretty much his. But like 2, 3, and 4, the instrumental, Mimesis, Least Known, those were riffs I had floating around for, like I said, at least a few years. I just never did anything with them. They just sat there. I was like, I can start something, but I'm like, where do I go from here? And I have his input, so it really helps.
Yeah, I think that is pretty much every guitarist's thing, or any musician's thing. Like, I got all these riffs. I got some really good starts on a song, but where it goes from here, and and having a good counterpart like Apollo, I'm sure. I mean, that comes. I mean, that's like a Swiss Army knife in your back pocket.
Oh, absolutely, because he'll come up with riffs that I wouldn't have thought to come up with. Like, hey, well, what about this riff? And I'm like, man, that's really cool. I wouldn't have thought of that. And then I just figure out what the bass is going to do with that, and it pretty much it goes from there. The more recent stuff we've been we're working on newer stuff too. I mean, we're obviously not going to stop writing, and we got newer stuff that we're going to kind of push it with that, like maybe try and incorporate
some fusion elements.
Really?
Yeah.
Sure.
Like not too much unlike what Cynic did on the Focus debut back in '93, the first Cynic album, but not copying them either.
Yeah.
Not being a direct derivative of that, or plagiarizing. But I'm a huge fan of jazz rock and fusion, and to throw a little bit of that into the Mimic mix, I think
it would be complementary.
Yes,
to the music.
Yeah, very much so
as a whole.
Yeah, and it all fits too. That's the thing too, because I went to Twist the Lime last weekend. Was the weekend before, and I forgot what band I was going to. Anyway, I'd seen some friends of mine who they listened to it. They're like, man, they were like, it's really good. They were picking out certain riffs of the songs that they liked.
Right.
And I saw a friend of mine, and he was like, man, the songs are like they're the perfect length time. He's like, they're not, they don't go on forever. They're not too indulgent, And that's the thing. Like, future songs will probably be a little longer, because right now our song's the longest song I think is the instrumental Mimesis, which is like 3.5 minutes or something like that. But we wouldn't mind making just a little longer. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I don't think it's gonna go like Maiden, where even their catchiest song is like 8 minutes. I can't see that. I don't have the attention span for that.
Yeah, attention span is the thing.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
In the age of social media, TikTok, and all that.
Right.
But totally, because that's why, when Apollo and I were listening back to the songs, he's like, what's the time on that? How long is it? And he's like, maybe we can add a couple more minutes. I'm like, well, I said we could, but I said, we got to remember, man, we're living in an age of short attention spans. People listen to something for 20 seconds and go to something else.
And skip it a track.
And it's like that, and I don't know when that became a thing, but I get it. So, but having said that, it's not like we sat down and said, okay, this song's going to be 3 minutes.
Right.
It's just how it came out.
Yeah, it's all about feel. It's what sounds, ideal for y'all to.
Yes. And another thing about the demo or about the songs is that they're very much written in a song format, what musicians would call A-B format, like a certain, like a pattern that's very catchy.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Whereas there are a lot of bands, they just throw riff after riff at you. There's really nothing that catches, nothing that repeats. And I think what kind of sets Mimic apart, especially locally, is just that, number one, the guitars are all standard tuning. But that aside, it's like the density of the riffs, they're contained within, 2.5, 3.5 minute songs. Mm-hmm. It's not like the riffs just go off and never come back.
Right.
It's very compact.
And I think that's what, it kept me interested. As it is pummeling, it's melodic, like it really catchy. You said the key word there, and people are going to gravitate towards something that's catchy rather than like you said, attention span is going to be all short and shit. And be like, all right, what's next? Let's get this track. What else is on Spotify or whatever?
Because going back to what Jorge was saying about the approach to the songs. When I was adding riffs in, like I mentioned before here in a Heraclean podcast, when I approach these riffs that I make, first above all, it's like, okay, would I be able to sing over this if I had to play this live? Okay, check. Secondly, how am I going to put this in a format that's, I don't want to use the term Beatles songwriting because it's, A-B, like you were mentioning. But beginning, middle, and end. Yeah. Where's the climax? Where's the settling out?
Yeah.
So that's always my approach when I come to writing songs, no matter what it is, especially for what I was doing for Mimic, because these were all instrumental riffs that Jorge was fucking around with, putting videos to on Instagram, and I'm like, that would be a badass song with some vocals over that part.
Let's switch gears here, and I mean, I know a little bit of your story. Like you mentioned the episode from Heraclean, which you can catch streaming, by the way, on any streaming platform. But Jorge, you are a first guest. This is your first time on the podcast.
Correct.
And, I would love to hear, how you, came, how did you get here as far as musically, your influences, you can go as far as back as you want.
Sure. All right. Well, probably unbeknownst to a lot of people, but I'm originally a guitarist. Bass is not my first instrument, but I started playing guitar, I guess, in my teens, around 15 or so. And I got into the shred thing, Yngwie, Gilbert, Vi, all that. But I didn't listen to primarily shredders. I was mainly into bands, and of course, in the mid '80s, when I was starting high school, it was all for me. It was all about thrash. I mean, my roots are in traditional metal: Priest, Maiden, early Crew, Accept, Metallica, Ozzy, Doc, and my roots are in traditional metal. But then when thrash came along, I was like, whoa. So everything was, quote unquote, the big four, Celtic Frost, Creator.
Fucking right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. In high school. And then at the time I was going to Catholic school, Holy Cross. And I know for a fact I was one of the few people that were really into that kind of music. And I remember sitting in religion class one day, and it was showing one of those horrid documentaries, quote unquote,
the satanic panic stuff.
Yeah. Oh man,
I remember that shit.
And they showed the cover of the first Metal Church album. Fantastic album.
Yeah,
killer album. And and here we have the guitar, and it has a cross for the neck in a graveyard. And I'm like, what? And the other dudes are looking at me like,
because you're obviously the metal guy in class.
Yeah. They never gave me any flack for it, really. They even gave me a nickname that stuck to this day, the Metal Monster. No, seriously. And so around 89, going into my senior year, I had a friend of mine who he lived up the street from a friend of mine's guitarist, Donovan Punch, who he had a band called Nuclear Crucifixion. He practiced at his grandma's house up the street from my friend Jason. He was like, hey, man, you know that band Nuclear Crucifixion, right? I said, yeah, I know of him. He said, well, man, he changed their name to Soylent Green, dude. Well, let's go watch him, come over, we'll go watch him practice. And let me backtrack for a second and say that Nuclear Crucifixion, I heard of them back in the mid-'80s, Wake up. Two-Lane Radio had a channel, WTUL, and in the mid-'80s, around 86, 87, 88, they had, Friday nights they had the hardcore show, Saturday nights they had the metal show, Generally Hostile. That's where I got turned on to a lot of the underground thrash at the time because it was still new.
Right.
Like you'd hear Possessed one minute, then they'd play Fate's Warning, then they'd play... So there was a lot of stuff and I made tapes of it, and I made a tape of Nuclear Crucifixion because their singer at the time, Glenn Rambo, rest in peace, I remember walking to the show, the Chalmette Cinema, and he had this huge ghetto blaster he's listening to, and he's listening to SOD, and I'm like, dude, SOD? He's like, hey, man, what's up? I was like, hey, my name's Glenn, and I chatted with him a little bit, and then I was listening to the show. I'm like, that's the dude I met in the parking lot, and so anyway, my friend Jason's like, yeah, well, they changed your name to Soylent Green. Let's go watch him practice, and we went. Glenn wasn't there. But, I remember Donovan because I went to middle school with his younger brother. So that's how I kind of knew him. I was acquainted with him. Mm-hmm. And I met Brian and Tommy and Marcel. And I watched them go through their set with no vocals. And I was like, oh, what the ever? Like, this shit's fantastic. So
What the fuck?
They were saying, yeah, and, we're playing our first show with Exhorter at Storyville. And this was May of 89. And I forgot who took me. No, I went with a friend of mine. My friend Raymond, he drove me. We went, and it was I Hate God, and Soylent Green, and then Exhorter.
Jesus.
And the show's floating around. It's on YouTube. I remember I Hate God because Mike Williams had this box of LPs that he just threw into the pit.
Wow.
And midway through one of their songs, and all the skinheads were stomping on the records and everything. And then Mike, and then people started booing I Hate God after about 15, 20 minutes, and Mike says into the mic, what's the matter? We're not fast enough for you? And because that was the thing. Their thing was a reaction to the whole thrash thing. They wanted to be as slow and as, and really get under your skin, and they succeeded. And then Soylent came on, and they were killed. I was like, and then Exhorter came on. I was like, whoa. I was like, these dudes, because I remember, like... hearing Kyle and their then guitarist David Main do a little promo spot on WTUL. And I was like, Exhorter. And that name always stuck out to me. And then I finally got to see him play live. I was like, wow. Like, these dudes, like, to me and a lot of people, they were like our local, like, Slayer.
Right.
Or, like watching these dudes, they were just like, whew. And then after that, I just started going to all the shows at the Jefferson Lions home, Storyville Jazz Hall, and there were other venues that came along, RC Bridge Lounge, the New Orleans Music Hall. But the thing is I got to know a lot of these people in these bands, who, are still around. Like, I'll throw some names out. If anyone's listening, they might know these names. I mean, Armed Response, Elimination, Destitute Savior, New Religion. A lot of people who were in those bands went on to play in bands that went on some, like Armed Response. Man, I just mentioned Gary Mater was their bass player. Mm-hmm. He's the bassist for I Hate God. New Religion, their bass player Scott Williams went on to play with Soylent Green.
Soylent Green, yep.
So if people back out there, if they remember those bands, Elimination, Scott Wally, who went on to play in A Hanging, he was in that band, along with John Rincon, who's doing that.
The Black Sabbath tribute.
Yes, who did the Black Sabbath tribute with Kyle.
With Kyle.
So there's a lot of roots here.
Yes.
In the whole Metairie, New Orleans scene, and I'm glad I got to experience all that. I got to see Exhorder in their prime. I've gotten to see, a lot of bands. I've seen, Creator, DRI, Korn. I feel lucky that I got to be around all that.
At the time that you saw them when
yes,
you did.
Yes.
Very lucky.
Yeah.
Like in their prime.
Yeah, exactly. And, and now knowing that the NOLA music scene, the history behind it, granted, I came in around, like I said, mid-'89, because it goes back, at least 4 or 5 years before that with Graveyard Rodeo and Shell Shock.
And the Slugs and all that.
Yeah, well, Slugs came a little later. Slugs right before he became Crowbar. There was Slugs, but
right.
Originally it would have been like Graveyard Rodeo, Shell Shock, who then became Aftershock when Kirk and Jimmy got in the band. But Graveyard Rodeo, Shell Shock, Exhorder was 86, so they came out a little later. So I came in around mid-'89, but just to be around all that. Paralysis was just starting out, and I met Ben.
Shout out Ben Fagu.
At a Lions Home show, and man, he really had the guttural thing down when I first met him. He was a lot younger, and he could really do the... Whoa!
Chris Barnes style,
yeah,
dude.
Yeah.
Like, he really had
that Paralysis demo,
Yeah.
that
It's
black and white one.
Yeah. It's fucking insane.
Yeah, and then you hear Patrons of the Dark, and you listen to it, and you're like, man, he really had to... So I got to meet and know everybody, and then all these... Years later, you still see them out. Some have gone on and are still doing music and touring, and others have just, called it a day or started family, settled down, and what have you. And I guess I switched to bass around 2000, year 2000. I just got bored with guitar. I'm like, what? I can do sweep arpeggios. I can do fast scales. I can play fast. Whatever. Who cares? No one cares. And so I
care.
So I just switched to bass because I was always intrigued by how fast bassists could play with their fingers, especially Steve Harris. I'd watch him. I'd be like, how do they play like that with their fingers? And so I just borrowed a friend's bass, and it went from there. And getting back to its influence as well, I guess my metal influences would have been like, obviously, Steve Harris.
Yeah.
I'll just rattle on. I'll start with the rock metal stuff. Steve Harris, Geddy Lee, Geezer Butler, Cliff Burton, Billy Sheehan, and then guys who were lesser known, but Tony Choi, who played with Atheist and Cynic and Pestilence, Doug Kaiser.
In all three of those bands?
Yeah.
Damn.
Okay. I didn't know that.
I did not know that either.
Yeah, Tony is on Unquestionable Presence and Elements with Atheist. He's on Testimony of the Ancients, and he's on the 90 and 91 Cynic demos.
How about Jorge dropping knowledge on me today?
Yeah, well, I and all this stuff was coming out. I kept tabs on all this. I still have this stuff on cassette. Death Human. All this is on.
I need to speak about this because like we have some history. Jorge and I. The first time y'all played Twist and Lime, that Halloween show with Go Horror.
Oh yeah. That was like our third show.
Third show. Okay, so in the crowd, I didn't know him yet, but I had to introduce myself to Jorge. I said, dude. He was, at the time, you were wearing the original OG Death Human shirt.
From Asphodel.
And I was like, man, you don't know me. I don't know you. but I know that's a fucking kick-ass shirt.
That was you.
That was me. That was me.
I remember that. I remember. Okay.
And I was like, because like that's my favorite Death album by far. By far.
Yeah.
I mean, we talk at length, you know, like me and someone I meet who's like into Death, and like I just gravitate towards the guys who, you know, who favor the Human album. And, you know, I love that.
That was their turning point musically.
Absolutely.
Very much
fucking,
so.
Chris on drums.
Yeah.
I mean, he dude.
Sean
Reiner. God damn it. Chris is on. Yeah.
Autopsy.
Yeah. Sean just, it was just revolutionary, man. With the ghost notes and all that shit.
Yeah. It was. I mean, listen, you know, and the way I got turned on to it was, and I'm going to back you up on this. You're right. It was never been heard. I had a guitar student I was teaching at the time, my friend Timmy, who I worked with, comes over, hey, Caicedo, think you could learn this? And I was like, Death Human. I'm like, oh. I was like, this has got the Cynic guys on it. Because I remember reading about Cynic in an old issue of Metal Maniacs when they were still in their demo stages. But I never heard them when they were a demo band. But I saw a picture of them, and I was like, for some reason, I got the impression these dudes were some badass musicians.
Yeah.
And then I looked at, I saw Paul Masvidal, and I'm like, oh, that's the Cynic guys. I put it in, and you hear, I'm like, 9/8 in Death? Nobody does 9/8 in Death. And then, you know, but knowing me with numbers, like knowing time signatures, you know, that intro kind of reminded me a little bit of kind of like Hot for Teacher, that a shuffle kind of thing. And I'm like, 9/8, no one's doing them. When it kicks in with the double bass, I'm like, jeez. And then you come to find out that there's no triggers on that album. A lot of the drums Sean does, even with Cynic as well. A lot of the drumming he does is one take. He doesn't do any punch-ins.
That's how good he is.
Yeah, I know, man.
Yeah, he's a one-take guy. In fact, his nickname, he told me his nickname in the studio, they call him One Take Jake.
Big Jake.
There's footage of them on YouTube, actually, Cynic recording a song off their 91 demo, the last song, and they're pleading for preservation. When Tony was still in the band, they're in the studio playing it. Sean knocks out anyone who's heard the song, those drums, it's all one take. He doesn't mess up. He doesn't go, wait, let me play that again. That dude was
phenomenal.
He was a machine. I mean, I have footage of them, bootleg footage of them from 89, when they had Mark Van Erp, later of Monstrosity, who was their original bassist. They're doing Damage Incorporated. They're playing it. Obviously, they're killing it. Sean's nailing it, making Lars sound like ridiculous. But the whole time Sean's playing it, he's laughing. He's like, because you know he's having fun and he's not even trying.
Not even trying.
You know, and when I got to meet and know those guys on a personal basis, you know, Sean was telling me about kind of stuff, like there was a rumor going around that they had wanted him to play for Slayer. He said no, that wasn't true. He said, but I would have taken that paycheck, and which I couldn't blame him, even though he would have been overqualified.
Okay, so let's back up a little bit. You knew Death on a personal level.
Yeah, Paul Masvidal. Yeah, I know Paul. Sean. The way I got to know Paul. I heard Cynic when it came out. Me and my friend Jason went downtown to go pick it up, Tower Records on Decatur. I bought it on cassette. He bought it on CD. He calls me up. It's like, dude, you have to come hear this. We listened to it. I was floored. Went out. I got it on cassette, and I wrote Paul Masvidal, and he wrote me back. And I was like, dude, how much are y'all shirts? And sent me a shirt, which I still have to this day. And went out to L.A., hung out with Paul. He put me up in a hotel. We hung out. I got to watch him. At the time, he had a band called Eon Spoke with him and Sean and a couple other people. I got to watch them practice. And the way I got to know him was just out the blue. I got Sean's number through information when he was still in Miami. I called up. And I'm like, they're probably going to feel like, who's this dude calling us? And I called the number. Jason Goebel answered the phone. I chatted with him. He's like, you want to talk to Sean? I was like, yeah, sure. Then I talked to Sean, and Sean put Paul on the phone, and it just went from there. And so, yeah, I got to, hang out with those guys. I remember I took a bunch of my old VHS bootlegs with me that had all this old Cynic footage. We went by Paul's apartment and watched all this stuff, and Sean and Paul did laugh, and they're like, you have all the, like, man, we don't even have any of this. I said, man, I scoured eBay to find this stuff. And the green Steinberger that Paul used with Death and with Cynic, that ocean blue, that Steinberger, I got to play. It was like right there on this guitar stand. I started playing it, and I was like, I'm playing your boy's guitar.
Yeah.
Like in the Lack of Comprehension video. Like I'm playing the guitar. And it played like a dream. So, yeah, I knew those guys extremely well. And then when I started going to NAMM, I would see Paul there, and we'd hang out. I got to watch him do his thing at the Strandberg booth. I got to meet Borvoy Kurjan, who he was really big in with the metal scene. Like, he contributed to a lot of the Roadrunner stuff, liner notes for Roadrunner, Metal Maniacs. He had the Firing Squad thing in Metal Maniacs magazine where he did the demo bands, which is where I found out about Cynic. So I got to meet Borvoy. I was like, dude, you're a legend. Like, I've been reading your shit since like the 80s. And yeah, good dudes, man. And it was a trip because Sean did a podcast on that. I mean, Paul did a podcast on Instagram, a live thing where he was talking about Cynic might do some select shows when they're re-releasing Focus this summer.
Oh, great.
It's been remixed and redone. They bought the drums out. They bought more of the guitars out. It's been redone. It's going to be re-released.
This summer? This year?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And he's like, we'll probably do a few select shows. And I was, so I sent him out. I said, hey, man, I said, I know a New Orleans bassist who might be interested in this. So what do I start doing? I start diligently learning the Focus stuff. I'm sitting here learning learning the stuff from what I could pick out because the bass is mixed so badly on that. Mm-hmm. And don't get me wrong, I don't harbor any notion that I would wind up, playing in that outfit. But I mean, it's fun to learn those bass lines and hear what Sean Malone put to it. Yeah, So yeah, so now we went in that little circle. Coming back, So like I said, Choi. Doug Kaiser, the bass player for Watchtower, who he was a big influence on a lot of those guys. Like Watchtower were a huge influence on Atheist and Cynic. Atheist, the first Atheist album, Roger Patterson. You take all those guys. Ron Royce of Korn, holy shit, is he? So you take all those guys. I mean, all those guys were influences, and then with the jazzy stuff, it's Jaco Pastorius. I forgot. How could I forget to mention Steve DiGiorgio?
Oh, Steve DiGiorgio, baby. Yeah.
Yeah. Who?
Bass God.
Yes. Who I also know personally. I
got to meet him at the. I went to Tampa Bay and watched the Chuck Schuldiner tribute show.
Oh, nice.
Back not this past December, but December last year. I met him. I was able to meet Bobby Cobley, and that was just fucking amazing. That was like holy shit moment for me.
Who's taller, by the way? Ben Falgus from Goat Whore? Or,
Steve, hands down.
Steve's gigantic.
Dude, he is.
Yeah, like I hung out with him and his wife at NAMM for a couple days, and we were hanging out, and he's just ridiculously tall. He's endorsed one of the nicest, most humble guys you'll ever meet. He's endorsed by EBS amps, and so we went by the EBS booth and picked up one of the basses and started playing, and somebody was talking to Steve, and I was playing these Sadus bass lines because I'm a huge Sadus fan, and one of the EBS guys was like, came over, sir, no, we can't have you playing. I was like, oh, sorry. So I put the bass up, and Steve saw it, but he had seen me. He's like, how you like the way the amps sound? Dude, the amps sound killer. Said, I think I said something like, I was playing some of your bass lines, and I told the names of the songs, and he's like, I don't remember how to play those. He's like, and I was like, yes, you do. Come on, man. And he said, no, I haven't played that stuff in so long. And I said,
that's wild.
I said, well, I could teach him to you. And he laughed. He's like, he got a kick out of that. And then, he was doing the Devil's Highway project with Kyle and Ralph Santola before Ralph passed. And when Testament would come play the House of Blues, Kyle was there, and I'd get to chat and hang out with Steve, and he's just he's a guy that inspired me to play fretless bass because I started on fretless.
He was playing fretless since that first Sadus record, right? Or was it Visions?
It was Visions of Misery.
Right.
But on the Autopsy, Fiend for Blood, that's him on the fretless.
I didn't know he was in Autopsy either.
He played on Severed Survival and Fiend for Blood, And
shit.
Yeah, and Fiend for Blood is all fretless. Speed will tell you that because he's another one that impressed. Any band I could name, any magazine I would have, any little tidbit of trivia about any band, he knows.
Yeah.
It blows me away. I love it. And so getting back to when it comes to the jazzy stuff, Jaco Pastorius, Jeff Berlin, Victor Wooten, and then there are a couple guys who are lesser known who are absolute monsters, speed demons who... I watch them and I'm like, Jesus, man, I'm so not worthy.
I'm so glad there's someone out there that makes you go, fuck, I can't do that, or how they do that.
There's a few. They're not American guys though. They're lesser known, but they're like YouTube. They're like Instagram stars, I guess you could say. But there's one guy, Federico Malaman, who's Italian. He's a big heavyset dude. He's an absolute monster, virtuoso, and then another guy, French guy named Hadrien Farod, who these dudes, I look like Nicky Sixx or Sid Vicious next to these guys.
That's incredible to say, coming from you, because if anyone's seen or heard Jorge play, especially like on your YouTube stuff or anything,
well, Instagram, yeah,
Instagram. I mean, dude, like, I'm not trying to blow smoke up your ass, but you're fucking awesome.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the kind words.
I'm serious, man. Like, I was like, dude, I remember one of your videos. You mentioned, I think you do lessons and whatnot. And I was like, man.
Yeah.
And I was like, I wish I kind of lived like closer to New Orleans, man. Get some lessons from this dude. I'd be unstoppable. Fuck.
Yeah.
No, I'd totally hook you up, man.
Within a month, you will be a virtuoso.
That's what's up.
Well, man, I mean, look, like I said, the guys I just named, that's what I was drawn from. And it's like, when your musical background is in thrash and death metal in general, and then you gravitate more toward the jazzy, fusion-y stuff. In some ways, it's not quite as difficult to play because with thrash and whatnot, you're already used to playing at a certain tempo. You got the speed, you got the chops. It reminds me of something that the original drummer for Atheist, Steve Flynn, said. He said you could take any really competent thrash or death metal drummer, put them in like a mainstream rock band, they could do it with their eyes shut. However, if you took a typical mainstream rock drummer, they probably couldn't do the thrashy or death metal stuff. So the real complex stuff.
Yeah.
So that's therein is the difference between the two. I mean, I used to go to lots of blues jams, play walking bass lines all night, and whatnot. And I think to myself, man, if I just busted out with like these dudes would lose it. But I mean, I'm not knocking
No.
any blue or anything
Right.
that. I'm not knocking any style, but I'm just saying that being able to acclimate toward stuff that's more complicated, especially in the jazz world, which it is in a lot of ways, having the speed and stamina from playing metal prepares you for that.
As I mentioned before, I don't know if I did. I have a jazz background. I did go in high school,
right?
A jazz major. However, the stuff that I was doing with Jorge, like doing the riffs in Heraclean, it's all like chromatic. A lot of it's chromatic stuff. A lot of it I'm barring the chords because it's a 3-piece band, so you need to sound as full as you possibly can. It's a little different in death metal, but this is more of like a prog tech thrash kind of deal that I'm doing with Mimic. So it was kind of a style adjustment, I gotta say.
Right.
And playing with programmed drums is a trip because it's on time. There aren't any tempo fluctuations, so you need to be on time. There's no room for error. So it was a style adjustment, and it was a bit of a challenge, I gotta say.
You handled it well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in fact, I think, man, it's about that time where, we stop talking about Mimic and let's let the audience get a sample of what y'all bring to the table.
Absolutely.
They never knew I hated people if I died. Propaganda, fool, and evil
it's a great opener. I failed to mention that. This is the opening. That was the opening track from Mimic's debut, Within a Nulled Future, and this caption that reads, it's 5 tunes of progressive thrash organs, but not having a typical NOLA sound is by far one of the biggest understatements. It's definitely a big understatement because definitely not typical, and progressive is just it doesn't do it justice. I mean, it's like the songs take off and to keep going. Yeah, and it's like just for like this 2 minute 2 minutes and 50 seconds of a song, man. It's like holy fuck, and it comes back. And it's like it's just straight pummeling.
It is definitely probably the fastest song on our demo. Mm-hmm. You see, the thing is also with that solo. That solo was probably like 3 takes or something like that.
If that.
But that's improvised. The solo is improvised completely. The song, fun fact, is actually about the 1984 novel.
Yeah, Orwell, Dystopia.
Yeah.
That stuff. That and Despotic Saviors, the second song. It's just I've always had an interest in I don't say politics, because I try to be as apolitical as possible, even though I have my own views and takes on things. But something like that, like how somebody could be just so all like Big Brother from 1984, Orwell. Something that could be just so all-encompassing and control every aspect and facet of the average person's life. It fascinates. It frightens me, but it's also somewhat fascinating as well.
Yeah, it is frightening. Just like some of the things that we're watching, that like the network, like HBO is one network that like really is putting out the latest, the Last of Us. Like, although it's based around a video game,
right?
Some of that shit, it's like, dude, that shit could happen.
Oh yeah,
it's only a matter of time,
absolutely,
before nature takes over.
Absolutely, yeah. And a lot of the stuff, you can draw comparisons from the society that we live in now, or the society that was not too long ago, in the 40s and 30s. That are very similar to 1984.
Yeah.
What if a fascist regime came to power?
Or a communist one.
Or a communist one.
Some frightening
or
shit.
Both.
Yeah, man. It's would not put it past the powers that be to just do whatever the fuck they want.
Oh, no, because they can, because they are the powers that be.
Uh-huh.
And we're the little people.
Yeah.
We are.
Yeah.
In the grand scheme of things, we really are.
Mm-hmm. But
although lyrically, I gotta say that I do my best not to write something where it's like, okay, that's too left wing or too right wing. Yeah. Everything that I write lyrically that has anything to do with politics is all neutral, from a neutral point of view. I think that no matter where you are, as far as politics concerned, whatever party you back, you're going to get shit on no matter what. Absolutely.
Catch-22.
That's just the way it is.
And it's it has nothing to do with music, but I got to say it's the stuff that, like when I was growing up in Greece, they take soccer very seriously.
As they do in Portugal. I learned that firsthand.
Oh, yeah, and Argentina as well, dude. And in Greece, they kind of form gangs over there.
Yes, I saw it.
Hooligans, absolutely. And if you say the wrong team or you support the wrong team in the wrong neighborhood, you're going to get your ass whipped.
Oh.
And I've been, growing up over there, I never suffered any serious beatings, but I was definitely picked on if I would walk around with a shirt that said Olympiakos or something, representing a Greek soccer team from a different city.
What was really interesting during my Portuguese trip, got to know a really good family out there, and they invited us to dinner, and one of the two things that I hear growing up, it's like, you don't bring up religion, you don't bring up politics at the dinner table with family. You don't do it. Well, apparently you could add football or soccer to that equation to this family in Portugal, because it got pretty spirited real fast in a hurry, man. I was like, shit.
Yeah, they have riots, all kinds of crazy stuff.
Yeah.
That's why, back to what I was saying, that's why I try to keep growing up. I always kept a neutral standpoint, and that will follow my mindset into writing lyrics for the rest of my life. I haven't written anything political at all with Heraclean, so to speak. It was all like, kind of fantasy stories and whatnot. But anything that I write that has to do with politics would always come from a neutral standpoint.
Yeah. So speaking of lyrically and musically, like what are some things that's like, that's pushing the envelope for you right now? What you listening to right now that's like, hey man, maybe I could bring this into Mimic, maybe I could bring this into Heraclean, or like, this sort of style, I guess.
Voivod. More space, more, because I went over the subject with Jorge recently. I'm like, hey dude, there's going to be a point where we're going to do some more tunes because I'm going to have the time on my hands.
Right.
And I came up with some interesting subjects, like all kinds of stuff like AI and
cloning,
cloning humans.
Yeah, artificial intelligence.
There's so much. There's so many sci-fi subjects out there that you could go after that does not need to be politics.
Absolutely.
So
I think that's probably the main reason I love Blood Incantation.
Oh yeah.
It's one of my new favorite bands, aside from Heraclean, aside from Mimic, aside from all the guys that I know around here in New Orleans, man. It's like there's so much hidden mysteries of the ancient civilizations that they touch upon.
And
so much to be spoken about.
And I love that. I just love it.
Me too.
I'm a geek for it.
Don't even get me started on that because
please get started.
No, because because they're right, man. Ancient civilizations. It's interesting because we think as being where we are in the timeline, modern Homo sapiens are like, oh, we come up with all this great technology and whatnot, and we have, but they're finding civilizations that they're civilizations that predate the flood.
Yeah.
And one of the big theories that's been going around for years is like, oh, dude, extraterrestrials built the pyramids. No. My take on it is that anything that was found pre-flood, because supposedly the Sphinx, I think supposedly predates the flood as well. So we're talking at least 14,000 years ago. Whoever did build structures from that period, like there's a Sphinx and there's
Machu Picchu.
But then there's older, there's Göbekli Tepe.
Yeah.
There's that one, and then there's another. These sites are like 14, 15, 16,000 years
the
old.
Wonders of the world, as they would call them.
Right.
When technically in that time period we're supposed to be very primitive, but the people, whoever were around at that time, they were terrestrial, but they were not extraterrestrial. They were terrestrial, but they just had a very advanced knowledge of physics and of acoustics and whatnot. And, it's very possible, like if you look at Göbekli Tepe and some of those places where they are just massive, massive megaliths and stone blocks that weigh so much and are so big that they just couldn't possibly have been lifted or been put there by human hands. So people are like, oh, dude, extraterrestrials or whatever. And then I'm not saying that there aren't any such thing. There's extra of them. There very well, it could be. I wouldn't doubt it. But I would summarize that maybe a lot of that was done by levitation with acoustics. And I found this out from a book I have. I bought at Tower Books years ago when it was still in Decatur, and it was called The Christ Conspiracy. Anyway, in the back, they had advertisements for all these different books. And this one guy, he got to go to Tibet, and he got himself in with the Tibetan monks, and he was able to watch them levitate stone and brick, and they used acoustic waves to do it.
Wow!
So that got me thinking. Well, okay, since these megalith, these blocks, they're so huge and so big, they fit so perfect. I'm thinking maybe it was done with acoustics, and then that, and then I don't know if it's in one of the pyramids in Egypt.
Well,
but
that's what I wanted to say next. Is a lot of the hieroglyphs depict people using these giant tuning forks that would be bigger than the size of, like, you would look at some hieroglyph paintings and you would see obvious tuning forks there, like people carrying them and shit. And maybe they use that to produce sound waves.
Yeah.
That's
lift
very possible.
stones.
Well, yeah, right. What I was going to say too is that there's also a drawing of Egyptians holding what looks like a lamp, like a bulb, like
A light bulb.
like
Right.
a light bulb. Yeah.
Right.
And so, like you were saying, Mo, there's so much we don't know, and just we I think take for granted just like, hey, we come up with all this killer technology and whatever. Yeah, but the ancients, they weren't so primitive as we've been led to believe.
No, they're not.
You've seen the movie The Mummy, right? The
Yeah,
first one?
yeah.
You know how there's the scene where they are using these mirrors to reflect the
Yes.
sunlight
Yes.
to give light to the pyramid? That's not how that happened.
No.
In ancient times, because the tombs within the pyramids, they're so vast and deep, the sunlight will not be able to reach it. You need either torches, which is very hard because it's like, they need to feed off of air.
Yeah, oxygen.
Right?
What to say?
And
Yeah.
oxygen.
Yeah.
So obviously there was oxygen down there, but it's like these guys had to have lit these pyramids a certain kind of way. And
Absolutely.
a lot of archaeologists believe that the secrets are within the actual hieroglyphs that they display for you around the pyramid.
I wouldn't doubt it. That's actually my bucket list, is to see the
Same here.
the pyramids and the Great Sphinx. That is my bucket list before I leave this mortal coil. I want to go in there. I want to go into the Great
I
Pyramid.
want to get into the
I
Great
want to go
Same
to the
here.
Sphinx.
Yeah.
I would lose my mind. I'd be like,
Get lost in
'cause
there.
knowing you're standing in something that is just so much more greater than you, and
It just withstood the time, the ages that it just stayed
for
there. It's
sure.
crazy, man.
Yeah, and they've even found similar structures on Mars. The face on Mars, 3 objects that look like pyramids adjacent to the face on Mars. But yeah, there's so much with ancient civilizations, we just don't know. There's still a lot to be discovered. Maybe that could be a mimic topic for
Absolutely.
I was actually going to say that for the demo that we have now, the song "The Least Known" is about potential life on Mars.
Yeah, eons ago, like a long time ago, like millions of years ago.
It's
Yeah.
fascinating shit.
Yeah.
I'm not even saying that. I'm just, like, it's,
I'm not saying aliens exist. I'm saying there's a possibility. Okay,
And the way that
clarify.
maybe we're
Right.
the aliens.
Maybe. The way the song came up was that on Facebook, I belong to this group called Martian Genesis, and they're always posting pictures of these pictures of rock, whatever that look like, human faces or look like people. And, some of them you could chalk up to what they call pareidolia, which is your eye, you see something that looks like something, but it's really not. Like people, like you could look at an outcropping of rock, say, oh, that looks like a face on there, but it's really not a face. It just happens to be the way the rock eroded.
Right.
So a lot of these pictures I take with a grain of salt, but some, I look at them, I'm like, man, that just looks too much like a face or a person to be artificial. Like it really, unless it's a trick of the light. So it got me thinking, was there maybe at one point, and perhaps still, a civilization on Mars? So that's how the least known came up, because they are the least known, And to me, the stuff like that, like talking about dystopia, possible ancient life on Mars, to me, that's a lot. It's just interesting.
Yeah.
It's something to make you think, something to make your brain, get your brain going. Like, yeah, what if that was the case?
Yeah, I agree with you, because I just think back. A minute ago we were talking about death and the members of it, and what comes to mind is a certain interview that Chuck gave, saying how it, like all the typical imagery and lyrical connotations of like death, Satan, and like rabid shit just running amok from the gates of hell. It's fucking boring and it's overdone.
Well, yeah, he thought it was very one dimensional,
right?
And he kind of had a point with that. I mean,
because these are all human. These are all very human, barbaric concepts.
Yeah,
the church, the religion.
Yeah,
these are to bring into songs. These are all concepts that have been in our past for a long time. Let's think about new stuff. Let's start writing about new stuff.
I agree.
Yeah, just something different. It's not, it's not like it was any premeditated thing. It's just, I've always been into the whole UFO phenomenon, science fiction, since I was like 10 or 11 years old. And I've just always found it fascinating, the ancient civilizations. Mm-hmm. When I read about Sumeria, that really kind of kick-started it for me, reading about the ancient Sumerians and how advanced they were. So that's always just been fascinating to me, much more so than politics, honestly, because at the end of the day, me personally, I don't care if you're to the left, you're to the right, you're saying, I don't care. It's a personal choice for each person. As with religion, I don't care if you believe or don't believe in a deity, for that matter.
Yeah.
It's your choice. It's your thing, and to me, stuff like dystopia and ancient civilization, that's just so much more interesting than if somebody supports this group or support. Me personally, I don't care, because it doesn't make you any better of a person than me. It doesn't make you any more of a spiritual person. It doesn't make you better. Yeah. You have a political view. You maybe support this group or you don't support this group. Regardless, either way, it doesn't make you a better person.
It just makes you another human being who has an opinion about things. That's all it is.
Exactly. It doesn't make you better.
And for some people, they want to, live their life and carry these kind of views because it helps them as guidelines throughout their life.
Absolutely.
It helps them, which I support 100%. If you don't go out and do terrible things and kill people, and
definitely. I get what you're saying. It's one thing to have an opinion, but to be an extremist, holy shit, dude.
Yeah,
I have a friend of mine like that. He's not a political extremist, but he's somewhat, I guess you could say, a nutritional extremist. Who lives out now? He lives in Hollywood. He used to live here, but he's a dear friend. But we'll be talking. He's like, "What are you eating?" I mean, blah blah. Dude, that's so bad for you. Know what they put in that shit? I'm like, oh God.
Here we go.
Come on. Dude, if it comes out of a box or a bag, I won't touch it. And I'm like, well, dude, good for you.
Yeah.
Like, don't.
The thing about that, I was on that kind of kick as I was changing my diet when I was a little bit younger. I started exercising, and
it shows.
I picked up boxing. I was a boxer in Greece, so I picked up on that for 3 years. And honestly, everything is genetically modified and tampered with.
I have no doubt.
Unless you have your own garden, which can be done, and you're growing your own food, and you have your own seeds, and you are processing and making this produce yourself, there's no way that it's not genetically processed, because at one point or another it hits a factory and somebody fucks with it.
Oh, I'm sure.
So that is, it's kind of a silly belief, to think that, don't eat that, this is better. Well, that has other ingredients that aren't so good for you.
Yeah.
Soy, dude, there's so many people who are, just like, that's their life. These are the products that they need to use. That stuff's so fucking bad for you.
Right.
At least for guys, anyway, it is. And I will attest to this, because for years, I drank soy milk and ate soy products, and it dropped my testosterone. I had no energy, nothing. Went to my general physician. He's like, dude, your testosterone levels are extremely low. So I was getting testosterone boosters. I was getting shots, and come to find out, so reading after the fact, soy, it lowers your T levels, and I didn't know that, because I love it. Man, this stuff's great, and pretty much, man, I don't know, dude, soy, and come to so. Yeah, so I can attest to that.
And
firsthand.
Carcass, dude.
Well, I'm down. I'm done with Saw. You convinced me.
Yeah.
Fuck this shit.
yeah,
Yeah, no, it'll drop you. It'll drop your T. Yeah, it will. It did it to me. Yeah,
like the band Carcass, the death metal band Carcass. They write all their shit is. If you listen to their old school songs, there's obviously textbook medical stuff and some gore elements and stuff, but now it's like they've taken the food industry is bad. The food industry is the devil.
Well, they're all
Right.
So they're all vegetarians,
to begin with, right?
Too. So yeah. So I try to eat as healthy as possible. I mean, yeah, I eat. Sometimes I'll eat stuff that comes out of I've been going a little crazy with the king cakes, and I still got 2 more to go. Jesus. So, which I just contradicted myself. Oh, I try to eat as healthy as possible. But no, I
got this king cake or two.
But, I'm about to go buy this Tres Leches king cake or this Voodoo chocolate king cake. Yeah. But, outside of that, I try to, eat as healthy as possible. And I'm one of those guys, you'll see me reading the ingredients on a food product, like reading the ingredients. All right, what's in this that I don't want to put in my body? So, but Apollo's right. It's so much stuff, and that, what I feel like telling some people when they're like, oh, well, I eat this because of that. Like, well, guess what, dude? That's probably been modified at some point to a tamper. Vegetables especially, fruit. They get pesticides.
Oh yeah,
pesticides. I mean, and I probably should wash my veggies before I eat them. I don't. I'll do it with fruit though. I'll like run water on the strawberries or my blueberries or what have you. But there's a lot of the like Paulo was saying, GMOs, modified stuff, bioengineered stuff. It's kind of scary, man.
Yeah.
So many interesting subjects, right?
Yeah. I mean, this podcast is a new milestone for a podcast. So we took on fucking ancient civilizations and fucking the food, like fuck you, the food industry. You know what I'm saying? We're on to you, fucking FDA and shit. Come on, man. No, but bringing it back, musically. How far y'all want to take Mimic, man? Like, I remember y'all saying that y'all need a live drummer. If y'all play some shows.
So I've had this conversation with Jorge. Obviously, Heraclean is primary for me. It's always going to be my baby. I'm never going to deviate from my duties to being in Heraclean. But if I were to ever do anything with Mimic, it's like I said with Jorge a million times. It's about finding the right people.
Right.
And they need to... Yeah, okay, the guy can play it, but do they like what they play?
Yeah.
That's the important part. Like, to find some like-minded musicians, not just people who can play, but like-minded musicians that can do it. Right. That's easier said than done. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna leave it at that.
Yeah, no, and that's true because you don't want to be one of those people that you can play it, but you're just going through the motions.
Right.
If you can play it, but you really genuinely are a fan of that kind of music, that's a plus.
Yeah.
So yeah, like Paul said, it would be a matter of finding the drummers who could play, what's on there, and having another guitar player to do the harmony stuff with Apollo. So yeah, because we wouldn't mind playing these tunes live.
Yeah, I think it would be. I know it'd be fun. It'd be really fun for me as an audience member to watch it go down. That's for sure, because it's nothing atypical of New Orleans that I've heard. Since I've been around.
I think that was the original plan. I mean, Jorge always seemed to have that idea.
Yeah,
for it.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's not like I set out to write. It's not like I sat down one day and said, "Okay, I'm going to write something that's completely, atypical of what would come out of New Orleans." It's not like that. I just wrote what came out. Like, it's just what's ingrained in my. It's what's ingrained in my DNA. Just the tech and the prog stuff. Which they're really. Not that I can think of too much of that here. The big New Orleans sound, of course, revolves around the what they call the quote unquote sludge sound or whatever. But it just revolves around when people think NOLA. They think of
the crowbars, our gods of the world.
The guitars are too really low. Very heavy, very very sonically, very crushing, very heavy, and and then you have, and from a riff perspective, different than what with where was I going with this? And from a riff perspective, I guess you could say somewhat. I don't want to say simple, which is to imply that it doesn't take
it's
much.
Out of the box. It's a little out of the box.
Yeah,
Yeah, like with Mimic, it just I listen to like it's weird, like I know Paul mentioned Voivod earlier, but there's stuff I listen to as well as stuff like I'm a big fan. I like Zappa. I like King Crimson. I like the Mahavishnu Orchestra.
The Lost Trident Sessions is.
Oh, I got that one.
I love that shit.
Birds of Fire in a Mounting Flame. I love that stuff, and it's like, what if we bring something like this to the table, but in a metal format, or if it's not that, then I'm listening to maybe something like an obscure German metal band called Mekong Delta, or a band called
those dudes are weird.
Mekong Stripped Out, Thought Industry, who are from Kalamazoo, Michigan. Just trying to bring an element and into some more traditional elements from like the Priest and Maiden years. Just parts or riffs or breaks or whatever that you really have not been done in a long time, or that you won't hear on modern records.
Right.
And that's one thing I'd like, and I try to keep up with what's coming out and what's going on. And I guess I would just like to see a bit more creativity. I mean, a lot of bands I hear now, it's like, I'm not talking locally, but I mean, like, if I'm scrolling through Instagram or Facebook, and the band, like, a lot of bands that I hear, there's not really riffs. It's just heavy syncopation, like, which it's good. It's heavy like that, but it's like, okay, all right, cool. So you've taken that whole Pantera Meshuggah thing and you've done your thing with whatever. But I want riffs. I want something that's, it's catchy, like, you want riffs, because riffs make a song. And, and a lot of the vocals with that kind of music tend to become one-dimensional. The singer just screams or whatever, then he might sing for like 10 seconds and then screams again. And it's like, I don't know. It's like, I would like to hear something maybe that ventures into, say, a 7/8 meter or 9/8 meter, or, some kind of like an odd meter, at least odd by metal standards, in a riff that just deviates from
Common 0 0.
Yeah, it's. Don't get me wrong. I'm not.
You're like crushing my world right now, Jorge. That's all I'll play.
Well, for now.
Well,
just take a few lessons from Jorge.
I'll plan on it.
Hit me up. I'll hook you up. I have Zoom and all.
That's what's up.
And all that. I can do Zoom.
Hell yeah.
And I'm not saying like Mimic's going to be this like groundbreaking thing that's going to revolutionize anything. It's just a couple dudes having fun playing stuff they like.
Just playing, writing tunes the way they want to hear them.
Exactly.
And if it comes to pass that, it gets out and people take some influence or like and say, hey, maybe, our band could do something like this or take an idea from it.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, because, dude, we didn't hit the studio with either of this. He came here with his laptop, and I sat on that bed right there, and I played the guitar parts, and I did my vocals over there by the kitchen, near that window.
That's wild.
So I mean, this was very low budget. This was very just programmed to speakers, like the way that some hip hop artists would do it.
Fucking right.
The guys that want you to buy their mixtape on the street.
We
did it the same way they did it.
I love it. I love the whole DIY process.
Absolutely.
Like, it's like each band that I covered locally, or and some of the other bands that, international bands that I cover on the podcast, they tell me there are different methods of how they
DIY.
Yeah, and it's like, dude, that's fucking awesome. Like, meanwhile, you got people like me who can't play to save their life, and I'm buying shit that I think that's going to make me sound even better. Nah, I'm just going to sound more polished.
Because it's
in a bad way.
It gives it an old school feel. Like that's the thing. All these dudes that did it back then, they didn't have fucking money for studios.
No.
All that stuff came with the label and the attention that they got later.
Correct.
You know, and obviously saving some money. Some people were blessed, born in a family with money. You know, other people were not. But they all did it DIY.
Yeah.
They all did the vocals in the closet. They all did that.
Yeah.
So it's like, why would we want to do anything different? I mean,
Right, and it's also, too, what you were saying, a lot of guys, atheists especially on the Piece of Time album, Kelly was telling me, there's little mistakes in the editing on that album. There are little breaks where because these bands didn't have a lot of money to spend all that time in, say, Morrisound or whatever. So you had to be on your A game, go in, record it. A lot of the atheist drum, when you listen to those first couple albums, that's all live drums.
Knowing how to play your instrument.
Yep.
Yeah, Atheist Death.
Know how to tune.
Yeah, all those, a lot of those Morrisound bands, or those bands in general from that time, you had to go in because they didn't have these big exorbitant budgets. So you had to go in. They went with what they could afford. So you had to be on your A game. And it's like what Apollo was saying, like a lot of people, what they do now, they quantize or they snap to the grid or whatever. If you listen to Mimic, there's none of that. Why? Well, A, I don't know how to do that. B, it gives it a very live, kind of almost like a loose feel, but not loose in the sense that it's not tight, because it is tight, but there's breathing room. I remember when I first wrote Despotic, and we had an early incarnation of Despotic. I played it for a friend of mine, and he's like, "Dude, it's good, but it just seemed like something doesn't line up. It's not." And I know what he was talking about. He because I know the bands he's into, and I get it. The ear, especially if you listen to a lot of tech or whatever, your ear is used to hearing things. So a lot of guitar riffs and a lot of metal riffs are written pop 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 pop. They're written in a very much where everything falls on the downbeat, and you're used to hearing the drums lock in with that. So if there's just the slightest bit of swing or just the slightest of being a little off, it might sound jarring to the ear, like, well, that's not in perfect time.
Yeah.
But what I was trying to tell him was that, it gives it a little bit of breathing room. It's human. It's not quantized. It's not mechanical. A good reference I like to use, but I don't know, is Corrosion and Conformity, the Animosity album, their second album, when it was still a three-piece. The title track of that album, which is the last song on the album, Animosity, when they start really getting into it, it almost sounds like the song could fall apart at any second, because it gets to a breakneck speed to where they're really pushing it, and you're waiting for the drums to you're waiting for Reed to drop a beat here, or you're waiting for Woody or Mike to make, and they don't. It all comes, and when the song comes back to the main riff, it's right there locked in. But at one point, it's going so fast you think it's going to break up like it's something. It's breakneck like it, but it comes in, and the only way I can describe it is like it's a tight looseness. I mean, listen to just. Anyone listening to this, go COC at YouTube, Animosity, the song. Listen to it, and when it comes to the fast part, when they really start going, it sounds like it could fall apart at any second, but it doesn't. It stays intact. Yeah. And that's how you can tell. So it gives it some excitement, like some tension, and I think Mimic's got a little bit of that, because nothing's quantized. Apollo and I played everything to the drums, so... I think it gives it kind of like a little bit of a loose feel, a little room to breathe. It's not so mechanical and so by rote. Yeah. Some breathing room.
I'm really curious to know, what are 6 albums that you can't live without, Jorge?
Well, let's see. I recently did a top 10 on Facebook, the albums that from an old post. So 6,
I did see that.
So 6 I could not live without. Oh, wow. Just 6. Okay, well...
There's a fire. The house is burning down. There's 6 records. Grab the 6 records you need.
Okay. That would Oh, man. Jeez. All right. Atheist and questionable present. Death, human, cynic focus. I guess that's obvious. Sadist, vision of misery. Jaco Pastorius, word of mouth.
One more.
Anything Alan Holsworth and Steve Morse, high tension wire.
That's 6, baby.
Yeah,
You did a lot better than most people, man. I put you on the spot.
Yeah, you did, man. Because I'm thinking like just 6,
Just 6?
Because if you ever saw my CD, cassette, and vinyl collection, you'd be like, oh, there's no way he's taking just 6. I mean, I got like the first Slayer on vinyl. I got a lot of Iron Maiden B-sides from Europe on vinyl.
Yeah.
I got Peace Cells on vinyl.
Oh, hell yeah.
Relics.
Yeah. I
love that.
I got the first Judas Priest on my. I mean, yeah, it's just stuff. This was what 84. I started listening in 84. I was 13. That's when I started listening to metal. So, yeah. So you're looking at 3.5 decades of somebody who, did his collecting and went through all of it: traditional metal, thrash metal, death metal, grindcore. I mean, it's I try to keep up.
Man, I tell you, this is one of the most interesting stories I've heard in quite some time. Thank you, man. Thank y'all both for allowing me to be here.
Absolutely.
I'm really excited about Mimic.
Thank you.
And before I roll out, give y'all this time. There's anything that y'all want to push, promote to the people? Anything y'all want to get excited about?
Check out Mimic on Bandcamp.
Yeah, I wanted to say to the people who purchased the demo, the people who are following us right now on Bandcamp, and the followers to come, thank you 100%. Apollo and I, we mean this from the bottom of our heart. Thank you. The site, it's mimic1.bandcamp.com. Again, that's mimic1.bandcamp.com. Check us out. Give us a follow. You like what you hear. You want to support, buy the demo. But the people who are already there and are following us, if they're listening, man, thank you.
Thank you guys very much.
Yeah, it means a lot, and it shows that there are people out there that still, want to hear something that, that enjoy good metal songs and like stuff that's well written. So again, man, just thank you, and there will be more music to come, and possibly merch. We're talking about shirts as well.
There you go.
Yeah.
Fucking merch, music, the whole 9, Mimic, Jorge, Apollo. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise,
Cheers,
man. Thank y'all, and be sure to grab this episode whenever you can, and look in the back catalog if you haven't heard any previous episodes of Tales from Riff. You can catch me on Facebook, Instagram, Tales from Riff Podcast, and I'm out.